All right, welcome back, Powers on Sports podcast. We are almost to the finish line in the college football playoffs. We got 2 weeks to go. A lot of drama still to be determined. A lot of team, not as many as last week, but we still have probably 6, maybe 7 teams still in the mix. And one of those teams, we're going to talk to the guy that covers them every day out west, Mr. Matt Zemek, editor of USA Today Trojan Wire. He covers the Trojans, covers the Pac-10. Pac-12, not Pac-10, Pac-12.
It's going to be the Pac-10. You're really not inaccurate there.
So we're going to talk to Matt. We're also going to talk to Matt about the playoff, some playoff implications. He's well versed on all things college football. So welcome back, Matt.
Thanks for having me. Let's roll. USC UCLA game week. USC football relevant again for the UCLA Notre Dame double stack at the end of the season. This is how it's supposed to be out here. That's at right. USC. Can't wait. Cannot wait.
All right, let me give Matt a little more pub. He's part of our College Gridiron Coast to Coast podcast network. He hosts the Get Off My Pylon podcast, talks all things Pac-12. So, Matt, and who's your partner? I can't forget his name.
Alex Blau. And hey, folks watching here on the Powers on Sports podcast, you want to listen to Jason on the Florida Football Insiders podcast, also part of the College Gridiron Coast to Coast network. Jason does a great job. His segments with Jim Levitt, awesome. Want to listen to Florida Football Insiders.
We're covering the whole country with this podcast network. Matt does the West Coast. I do a little Florida. We do some Big Ten. We do some LSU. We do some ACC stuff. So we try to give all the fans a good flavor of the world of college football. All right, let's get right into it. Before we get to UCLA, USC, by the way, they both vomited or UCLA and freaking Oregon vomit all over themselves last week. I mean, let's get to Oregon first. How do you put your entire season on the line, 4th down and 1 in a tie game from your own 34-yard line with a backup quarterback in the game when the starting quarterback taps you on the shoulder before 4th down and says, "I'm good to go. Put me in the game, coach." We don't call a timeout and we run a 4th down play with 2 minutes to go in the game, in the biggest game of your season to this date, and Dan Lanning's biggest game of his career.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for saying the truth. It's not about whether he went for it on 4th down. It's that you need Bo Nix in the game, and he's there and he's willing. And of course, here's the thing, Jason. He put Bo Nix back in
the next drive.
If you're putting him in on the final drive, you can put him in for that play. What's going on? How is this so hard? So it's not about the 4th down decision.
Well, it is.
It's not even about the 4th down play call. It's you have to have Bo Nix in there if he's able. And because you put him in for the final drive, he was obviously able to be on the field, and you don't put him on there. That is the point. That is where the focus should be. Thank you, Jason, for making that point. That's the thing. Bo Nix should have been on the field because we all saw what happened. No one respects Ty Thompson, all right?
Throw the ball.
No one expects him as a passer.
Yes.
No one expects him to do a naked bootleg. Washington put everybody in the box. It's going to be a handoff up the middle, selling out. Washington could know what was coming. Now, so if you have Ty Thompson and you know that Washington's going to crash down on the run, then you have to call something else. So, if you're going to have Ty Thompson, you can't do the predictable thing with 10 million guys in the box selling out against the run. You have to do something different. A wide receiver screen, or the receiver coming across in motion, you hand it off like Deebo Samuel.
Run a reverse, some kind of misdirection.
You have to do something different if you leave Ty Thompson in there. Totally, that is where the focus should be. Total mismanagement by Lanning and Kenny Dillingham.
And what kills me, if they're behind, obviously it's a no doubt you have to go. Dan Lanning is a defensive guy. I know Michael Penix had success. They moved the ball, but you cannot risk your whole season from the 34-yard line on 4th and 1 with 2 minutes to go in the game. If you punt the ball and Michael Penix goes 50 yards and they kick a field goal, you clap your hands. But to me, you can't go for it on your own 34-yard line, knowing Bo Nix is not in the game. So double whammy on Dan Lanning, who's a defensive guy, in my opinion.
Well, and this is where we get to, the weaker side of Oregon. The defense has not been good. The defense gave up 30 to UCLA. That Oregon won because Oregon scored 45. I mean, this is what we've seen here at USC. Like, the defenses are not very good. The offenses can score in the 40s. The defenses just have to be okay, but their defenses aren't good. And so,
I get it, but you're at home too. You're at home too.
That's part of the calculus. The other thing is Tosh Lupoy. Like, we remember him from Alabama. We remember Clemson just absolutely roasting the Tosh Lupoy Alabama defense. So, like, Lanning did not get as good a defensive coordinator as he could have or perhaps should have. So that is also part of the conversation for Oregon. So, like, you have to know your personnel, you have to know your weaknesses and your strengths. That's the larger conversation to be had there.
What did Lanning say at post game about Bo Nix not being in the game?
He said he thought about it, but he ultimately said he was confident in the play that they had, and I don't think that cuts it. That's not a satisfactory answer. And again, because the handoff is coming with Ty Thompson, expressing confidence. Let's also note Oregon had 2 offensive linemen get injured in this game, one of them being the center, Alex Forsyth.
Yeah.
So you don't have your 100% full strength offensive line. The idea that you can just smash mouth Washington when Washington has everyone in the box, that just does not cut it. No one's convinced by that line of thinking by Dan Lanning.
Yeah, I don't understand. And by the way, Michael Penix, Washington quarterback, transfer from Indiana, as a Tampa, Florida product where I'm at here. He's from Tampa. Big high school career here. Went to Indiana, obviously played for Kalen DeBoer, Indiana. Then went to Washington with Kalen. So quality quarterback. Again, he might have driven him down the field and kicked the field goal. I get it, but you cannot. I just can't. In a tie game, with under 2 minutes to go. If there's 4 minutes to go, I don't have a problem with him going for it because you're going to have time to get the ball back no matter what.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, if you do put your season, the game on the line for that kind of thing, have your best players on the field.
Have to call timeout.
Call your best play. Like, you at least have to do that. And
yes.
He didn't check either box. Didn't have his best players. Certainly wasn't the best play under the circumstances. So he's 0 for 2.
And the bad part is this Oregon team had a legit chance to go to the playoff. They were in prime position to run the table there and get to the playoff after the beatdown they took at Georgia.
TCU just has to lose once, and it was all right there for Oregon. Yep.
I mean, that's the part that's disheartening for if you're an Oregon fan.
And for those who don't follow the Pac-12 really closely, like, this is a tradition out here in the West. Come the middle of November, Pac-12 teams in the playoff hunt torch their resume. I mean, we this goes back 11 years. Oregon lost at home to USC. That was the Matt Barkley, Lane Kiffin team, 2011 when it had a shot. Lost at home to Stanford in 2012 when it had a shot. These are November moments. Oregon and Mario Cristobal lost that game to Herm Edwards and Arizona State in 2019 when they had a shot at the playoffs. And then last year, Oregon loses at Utah. All in November. Like, you get to November, a Pac-12 team in the playoff hunt shoots itself in the foot. You can set your watch to it. It's how we roll out here, which is out of bed and on the floor and then into the hospital.
In last question, we'll move on. Is Lanning an analytics guy? Because to me, that was an analytics decision to go for it 4th and 1.
Well, Lanning certainly seems to be of the new age mindset that he is extremely aggressive on 4th down. And, against these bad Pac-12 defenses, that generally works. And it did work for him against UCLA. Went for it on 4th and 3, went for a few other 4th downs, converted them. It all worked. He also called a surprise onside kick in the UCLA game. He did that again against Washington. So, like,
you can do it in the second, third. You can do this stuff in the second and third quarter. But when there's 2 minutes left in the game and your season's on the line, you can't be that reckless.
Certainly not without Bo Nix. You have to have Nix in there if he's able.
Yeah. All right, let's get to UCLA. Chip Kelly. I mean, not that they had an opportunity to. They were of the 3 teams in the Pac-12 the least likely to make a playoff run. Potentially, they could have. They would have needed massive chaos to happen in front of them. But for them to lose to Arizona, what does that tell you about that UCLA team?
just not accustomed to that kind of pressure, not accustomed to that kind of situation. A lot of other programs, like let's say Clemson, you could look at others across the country, Michigan, Ohio State, like that they're used to the grind, they're used to process of pacing themselves, and UCLA not really in that same boat. And it's going to be really interesting in terms of Lincoln Riley and USC. Like this group is not used to it, but Lincoln Riley is. So
Right.
does Lincoln Riley's expertise rub off on his players? It's going to be very interesting. But it really seemed right that UCLA was looking right past Arizona, thinking about USC. Like it was that kind of game. It really felt like that UCLA was not fully there, because let's lay out the numbers here, Jason, Powers on Sports Podcast. Arizona had allowed 45 or more points in 5 of its previous 6 games. Arizona allowed 49 points to Cal, which just fired offensive coordinator Bill Musgrave.
Right.
Like, so Arizona was the ultimate Swiss cheese defense. Arizona and Colorado, 2 worst defenses in the Pac-12 by far, and UCLA scoring 28, and 35 would have been enough to win, and you're scoring 28. Like, just everyone hit the snooze button at the same time. And, in terms of coaching, Chip Kelly absolutely mangled the final sequence. UCLA at the Arizona 29-yard line with 22 seconds left. 22 seconds left.
That's 4 plays. That's probably 4 plays.
That's at least 4 plays, maybe 5 if you play it right. And so 29-yard line, like you don't think about getting the whole chunk at once. Generally, if you're at the 29 and you have 4 or 5 plays to work with, that first play should be like a 15-yard pass. Get inside the 15-yard line, and then you're dealing with, quote unquote, normal pass plays.
Right.
That don't take a lot of time, that don't require the quarterback to be looking down the field, hoping for a chuck and pray type completion. But what does Chip Kelly do? 4 chuck and pray passes from the 29-yard line. They were all toward the end zone, toward the goal line. That is just dumb. And Chip Kelly ought to know better. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson ought to know better. He's a veteran. He's been at UCLA for 19 years. He's like the Perry Ellis of Pac-12 quarterbacks.
Yes.
Like, he's been there, done that. He should know better. The coach should know better. That was shocking. Not that UCLA failed. It's just how they went about that. Like, it should be obvious. You get close on the first pass, and then with like 15 seconds, then you have 3 plays from the 10, from the 12, and they didn't do that. It was just 4 hope and pray lobs. That was awful. And so UCLA just was not prepared to play this game, and it was not prepared to finish this game. And that tells me it was all about USC, and they got ambushed looking ahead.
All right, let's get to the matchup here. USC UCLA this weekend. The Battle of LA, obviously, bragging rights. You got the private school kids versus the public school kids kind of mantra. What is the sentiment in Los Angeles about this rivalry, especially when both teams are good?
Yeah, well, it's the biggest game. It's the biggest USC-UCLA game since 2005. In 2005, Carl Durrell had a 1-loss UCLA team coming into the Coliseum against the unbeaten 2005 juggernaut with, Reggie Bush, the Heisman Trophy winner, the great team trying to, go back-to-back with consecutive BCS national championships, eventually had the 34-game winning streak snapped by Texas in the epic Rose Bowl. So it's the biggest USC-UCLA game in 17 years. But UCLA lost, it takes a little bit out of it. Not everything, but a little bit. Because if UCLA had won, they would both be on the same footing. They would both be 9-1. Their quarterbacks would both be on equal footing in the Heisman race. Both would have had the equal, just win this game, you get in. Now, if USC wins, it's in the Pac-12 championship game. If UCLA wins, then we're going to get some messy Pac-12 tiebreakers for the second spot, along with the Utah-Oregon loser. That could get very complicated. So the UCLA loss took some of the juice out of this, but it's still huge. Like, it's for bragging rights. The winner's going to have at least a 10-win season, if not 11 or 12. Pac-12 championship game, New Year's Six Bowl, chance to go to the Rose Bowl.
Right.
So this is the way it used to be with John Robinson and Terry Donahue, and all, of course, back in the 1960s and, the 1967 USC-UCLA game. For those who don't follow history, Pac-12 history, Pac-8 history very closely, 1967 is the most important, epic, memorable USC UCLA game of all time because you had Heisman Trophy candidate Gary Beeman, quarterback of UCLA, Heisman Trophy candidate O.J. Simpson for USC, and that's the game in which, and you might remember Reggie Bush making a cutback run against Fresno State in 2005, the moment he sealed the Heisman Trophy.
OJ run.
It traced the path of the OJ run in 1967 against UCLA, and that was a matchup of top 4 teams over the running for the national title. USC wins a thriller and eventually wins the national championship. That was John McKay's second national title out of 4. He also won in 1962. Then again, his 1972 team, which many people think is the greatest USC team of all time. And then one more time before he went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he won it all in 1974. So 1967, the greatest USC UCLA game. This game doesn't rise to the same heights, but like it's certainly one of the bigger ones we've had in recent memory, and that certainly spices it up. So in terms of looking at the matchup, I mean, I'm thinking this is a track meet, and one of the really key questions is, can Eric Gentry, the linebacker for USC, who's been out since the end of the Utah game, he got injured in the 4th quarter of the Utah game on October 15th, can he play? If he can't play, man, USC's been extremely thin at linebacker, and everyone can see it. USC doesn't have the talent on defense to be at that elite Pete Carroll level. They're still a notch below, and that was widely agreed upon before the season, that USC did not have enough in the cupboard on defense. So without Eric Gentry, who has long strides and long arms, he covers ground, he deflects passes, he was contributing to all those interceptions in the first month of the season. USC had a couple 4 interception games. Gentry makes so much happen for that defense. Without him, it's going to be a much tougher climb. Now, people will say, hey, the Travis Dye injury, yes, that's big, but Dye's absence is going to be bigger in pass protection than in the running game. Austin Jones, the transfer running back from Stanford, who's the next man up in the rotation, he can run. The problem is his pass protection.
Right.
That's why Lincoln Riley has not been playing him as much. Lincoln Riley at USC, he will demand that you be able to do everything well. That's not just what you do with the ball. You have to block. You have to prepare things for your teammates. You have to be a good complementary piece. And Austin Jones is not nearly as advanced as Travis Dye and those other football IQ dimensions. And so pass protection with Austin Jones on the field, that could be when the Trojans and Caleb Williams get into trouble. That's going to be the thing you want to watch for when USC has the ball. But I think that if you were to say who's the bigger injury, Travis Dye or Eric Gentry, I think it's Gentry. He needs to play for USC in this game.
What's the status of Addison and the receivers?
Addison played against Colorado. Didn't play a lot, didn't make a big statistical imprint, but Lincoln Riley did say just wanted to kind of get his blood flowing again in a game situation after he missed the Cal game and missed the Arizona game. So he will play, and if he's probably going to be close to full speed, that's excellent news. And that can certainly compensate for Eric Gentry. And it leads me to think, Jason, that if USC is going to win this game, it needs to be 56-49. That if USC is not scoring 40 points, USC is toast.
Right.
USC has to score at least mid-40s, if not more, to win this game. If USC has a less than great offensive day, curtains.
All right, I'm gonna make a bad assumption. Probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'm gonna assume USC wins the game. Let's assume USC gets to the Pac-12 title game and wins it. They're a one-loss team. I want to give you a couple playoff scenarios and give me your thoughts. Obviously, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU are 1 through 4 now. We still got 3 more rankings to come out. USC probably jumps to number 6 behind Tennessee, I would guess, going into Tuesday night's rankings. That'd be my guess. We're doing this on Monday night. I would guess they go to 6 behind Tennessee. Here's a couple scenarios. Obviously, you have Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State. One of those are going to lose. If it's a classic, though, will they drop below USC, a one-loss Pac-12 champion USC? That's question number 1 for you. If it's a classic in Columbus,
I think USC gets in. I think USC gets in over the Ohio State Michigan loser. And let's keep in mind that Notre Dame lost to Marshall and Stanford, but Notre Dame rebounded, beat Syracuse, and then crushed Clemson. So people are now thinking, and Notre Dame is going to be in the top 20 of the playoff rankings this week. So that becomes a good value win. Like and USC needed that in terms of the playoff.
Sure.
So if USC goes through UCLA, Notre Dame, and then Oregon or Utah, those are 3 really strong wins stacked together, and USC is a conference champion.
Yes.
So I think that USC gets in ahead of the Ohio State, Michigan loser. I do not think USC gets in ahead of Tennessee, because Tennessee has those 2 great wins, Alabama, LSU, and dump trucked LSU on the road. That is going to be, and of course the SEC has the benefit of the doubt. It has earned the benefit of the doubt in these kinds of questions. So an 11-1 Tennessee, not playing in the SEC championship game, but having those 2 awesome wins, I think Tennessee is before USC, a 12-1 USC in the pecking order, but I think USC is ahead of the Ohio State, Michigan loser, and a 12-1 Clemson and a 12-1 TCU if we get to that. TCU has to win out. TCU has to be perfect to get in. I think that's pretty unanimous. But I think 12-1 TCU is behind 12-1 USC. It's really.
I'm going to give you the one scenario where I think you're wrong. Georgia in, Ohio State, Michigan winner in. If LSU runs the table, they're getting in. If they beat Georgia, they're getting in, which means Tennessee will not be a 3rd SEC team, where USC could then jump to the 4th spot if they run the table too.
Okay, Jason, let's go back to 2016. Ohio State had 1 loss. Penn State was the Big Ten champion with 2 losses. Who got in? It was Ohio State, even though it did not win its conference championship. So I was ready for this. I firmly think that Tennessee will get in over a 2-loss SEC champion LSU if we get to that.
I don't think
But it's the ultimate chaos scenario.
I know Tennessee went down to Baton Rouge and beat them soundly, but if LSU beats Alabama, wins the rest of their games, and then basically beats Georgia in a de facto home game for Georgia in the Georgia Dome, there's no way. I don't think any chance in the world they keep them out and put Tennessee in, who got beat by Georgia. I know it was only 2 touchdowns, but really that was a 3 or 4 touchdown game.
We can agree it's the headache the college football committee desperately wants to avoid.
And the good thing is I think USC in that scenario gets in as the 4 seed because, one, it's a brand name. Say what we want. The committee wants a brand name to play Georgia in round 1 or Ohio State or whoever. They want that West Coast audience. If it's dead even between them and Tennessee, 1, they've got a conference championship like you mentioned, and 2, I think they would want that West Coast, that brand of USC back in the national mix.
And you can't have you wouldn't want to have 2 SEC teams playing each other in a semifinal. That's the other thing.
Right. I mean, so I think, again, there's I don't think there's any chance 3 SEC teams are making it. So all right, let's say LSU loses.
If the Pac-12 champion has 2 losses, and TCU loses, there's a chance.
Take the loser.
And Ohio State, Michigan is a blowout.
That's different. That's your scenario is a little different. Correct. Yep. But what do you think's going to happen? Can US? I mean, do you think USC's got the metal and the cojones to run the table here?
USC has the metal and the cojones, but it doesn't have the bodies. Like if you don't have Travis Dye and Eric Gentry, it's a really big ask. To me, I mean, obviously you want to at least make sure you beat UCLA or Notre Dame. At least get one of the 2 and hopefully get a Cotton Bowl bid. You get to the New Year's Six. It would be a waste of a great season if USC went to the Alamo or Holiday. If USC can at least get to the New Year's Six, if you told me right now you get to the Cotton Bowl, you play Tulane, I'd take it. Because it would be a disaster to go to the Alamo or Holiday during this season.
Last question, I'll get you out. I know you got to go here.
Yep.
Heisman Trophy. If Caleb Williams runs the table here and plays really well these last 3 games, is that enough to win the Heisman Trophy over a guy like Drake May, maybe even a CJ Stroud?
I think it's Hendon Hooker's to lose.
Okay.
I think it's still Hendon Hooker. Like he played great against Missouri. if your one bad game is at the defending national champions between the hedges, I still think it's his to lose.
Okay.
CJ Stroud gets to make his case against Michigan. So, like, if he makes a Troy Smith statement from like 2006,
right,
sure, but we haven't seen that yet. So, if Stroud plays poorly against Michigan, and if Drake May can't beat Clemson in that North Carolina Clemson
correct.
ACC championship game, then Caleb Williams has the chance to be right there with Hendon Hooker at the very end. I think that's the way to put it.
All right, Matt Zemek, great work, man. I know we may even have you back in another. If USC's still in it 2 weeks from now, we might have you back.
Bring it on.
We might have you back. So appreciate the time. Tell everybody where they can find all your great work in the Get Off My Pylon podcast.
So Get Off My Pylon, you find it at Spotify, Google, Apple, Red Circle, wherever you listen to your podcast, just like Florida Football Insiders, Jason Powers. Also, wherever you find Powers on Sports podcast, Jason obviously will be able to market that on his show. But so Get Off My Pylon is part of the College Gridiron Coast to Coast Network, and then Trojans Wire, trojanswire.usatoday.com. We got UCLA week covered, just lots of content. Want to make Trojans Wire your home for USC UCLA coverage.
And tell Dan Lanning, punt the football or call timeout and put Bo Nix in the game, please.
Amen.
Have a great week, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.